Yay! Okay, happy Friday, everybody. I hope you guys are taking time to watch these because I've kind of made it a routine every Friday, bringing someone to you because as I go through my menopause journey, the more I learn, the more I'm told, the more I want to ask more questions, and the more I want to just dive in and then bring it back to you. And lucky for me, I have Renee Kindler in my life, and she is just as passionate about women's health. And she reached out and she's like, I'd love to be a part of this and be interviewed. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. I was so excited. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Renee right off the bat. Imagine waking up truly refreshed with energy to tackle your day and thinking with remarkable clarity. Imagine, even amidst a demanding life with a little hormone havoc thrown in on the side. This is the focus of Renee Kindler's practice. Renee is a board certified nurse practitioner and sleep expert who earned her MSN from Gonzaga University. More than just treating symptoms, she listens and guides you to overcome the root causes behind energy slumps, restless nights, and scattered focus by expertly addressing the underlying imbalances in nutrients and hormones, utilizing specialized functional medicine training. Renee delves into the intricate connections between your lifestyle, your environment, and even genetics to create personalized pathways towards optimal health. She shares her expertise to identify what's truly stealing your
Little tiny
energy, sleep.
for me. Maybe I will try to send a note.
Oh, do you have me?
Are you there?
I'm here.
I do. Do you have me?
Yes.
For a little bit, I could not hear you at all, and I don't know if you were just frozen
Oh, I don't
or if we
know.
were frozen to the group. So,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. So she shares her expertise to identify what's truly stealing your energy, sleep, and focus, guiding you toward a life where you can show up fully every single day exactly as you desire. So, Renee, I'm so grateful that you reached out. I'm so grateful you're here. I know many women struggle with getting good quality sleep, and that it is one of the core things that we have to have in our life, especially as we age. So could you just first tell the group like what took you down this path and being so passionate about women's health yourself?
well, I've always had a special interest in women's health, kind of going through my lifespan and challenges I had with hormones, and then most especially when I started working in sleep and neurology. I would have patients who would come to me, and some of them had sleep apnea. Usually they had long-standing sleep issues, and we would get everything looking perfectly number-wise on all their machines and everything, but people were still exhausted, and I believed them. So trying to figure out, okay, what else could it be that would be causing you to have so much exhaustion? And some people would be sleeping a good amount of hours and they were still waking up tired. Some people couldn't fall asleep. Some people were waking up in the middle of the night. And so then as my journey too, I fortunately have always been a pretty good sleeper. I'm one of those people who was sleeping a lot of hours though, and still waking up not rested and didn't have sleep apnea. So what else was going on was kind of figuring out that because there is something about the quality of your sleep too, and sometimes the things we do before bed or throughout our day that can be impacting what's going on in our brains and our sleep when we're sleeping at night. That's impacting those things. And one of those big things that can be, a couple of big things that can be changes as we get closer to menopause, but in a large perimenopausal time. And even women who are younger and have problems with polycystic ovarian disease or endometriosis, which is showing us their hormones aren't balanced, um, then the hormones can actually impact your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep, and get restful sleep too. So that's kind of where I started like, okay, what else is here? And it is amazing to hear people, men and women, who get a good night's sleep and can make it through their day and who aren't short with their kids and aren't short with their husband and can make dinner and don't have to grab something quick because they're so exhausted by the end of the day. And how much just your emotions and your life and your patience and your health in general improves when you get a good night's sleep. Um, it's hard for me not to tell anybody I hear saying they can't sleep, like, hey, there's something that can be done. It's not just that you turned 40 and you can't sleep anymore. And it's not always hormones. One of the big things that it can be too is your blood sugar. So that's another thing that I struggle, because some people even just get put on hormones, which might help, but that's not what their main underlying issue was. And they will eventually get worse and worse and worse and develop issues again when their blood sugar is impacting them even more profoundly down the road.
So amazing. And it's another thing that, I mean, I just keep hearing this over and over too, is aging and getting older. It doesn't mean we have to just to succumb to dysfunction. It just it doesn't have to go hand in hand. And then the other thing was the difference between sleeping versus feeling well rested,
Yeah.
and the huge difference in that. So, yeah, please tell us. And I just commend you, and I think it's so amazing that you didn't just continue on the path that you were in the medical setting, just like taking it for face value. Like you actually heard them and then wanted to take that to a level of what else is missing here? Where else can I help in this piece, in this puzzle for them, making them feel well rested, even though maybe the sleep study's telling them they're getting enough sleep. So I just think that's amazing that you're doing that.
Well, and the other thought along with that is I always tell people we can chase a lot of things and do a lot of things. But if the truth is you're not sleeping enough, that's never going to fix you. I mean, I guess you could take stimulant pills, and a lot of people think they're doing okay because they're drinking or intaking so much caffeine that they're overcoming or feel like they're overcoming the sleep deficit. And maybe energy wise, they might be, but they're not, their body is not overcoming the sleep deficit and how the impact that's having. So that's when that's always something important to ask, because sometimes the amount of energy drinks and coffee people have. And so that's why when I say like looking at the root causes and the functional, like what's there? Is there more underlying, or is it really some basic things that we need to do differently that we have just slowly adapted to? Or some people tell me, I didn't even know that I could have that much energy, because you don't usually, for most people, it's not like I had all the energy I needed and then now I can't even make it through my day. It's kind of, we have kids, we're up more, we attribute to things to different things, we're caregiving for parents. There's all different kinds of things that can happen. And sometimes it's one event. If you sit and listen, like what you're saying, you can figure out what kind of started the sleep decline. And sometimes it's not. But being able to do that, or also then having people recognize, hey, this is what started my sleep decline. I know next time I travel or when I'm doing this, I we are a military family. So it's very common when spouses deploy for sleep to become disrupted and different things. And moms often tell me, like, that's my only like alone quiet time. So I stay up an extra hour because I get to do these things without anybody else needing me at that time. So sometimes it's as easy, those aren't always the easiest things, as looking at those kinds of things and what's going on in your daytime, then needing to figure out hormones and blood sugar and all those other things. But sometimes it's not. So I always tell people you can try those things. Those are the things that if you want to search on Google and see, like, what should my bedroom look like? How much light exposure should I have? All those kinds of things can be helpful. And this is one thing a lot of people don't realize that I always love to share because it's easy, it's free. You can do it tomorrow. Is it matters as much as what we're doing in the mornings as what we do at night for most people. So if you can get light to your eyes within 10 to 30 minutes of getting up, ideally, hopefully the sun's going to be out. That isn't always true, depending on where you live and what your work schedule and those kinds of things are. But anything before noon, if you can get 10 to 30 minutes of light exposure to your eyes, that's great. But even opening your blinds, or if you don't have something, I have here like my little lamp that I have. So today it's cloudy. There wouldn't really be enough light exposure for that. So not only does it help with mood for some people, but as our brain starts telling melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, to come down in the mornings. Hopefully, our cortisol level is going up, not too high, but it's making an appropriate response. And the light to our eyes matters with that. Same thing at night. The light to your eyes is hopefully helping your melatonin come up because it's going to be kind light and not blue light. And we're going to either have glasses or amber lights on in the night, in the bedroom lights, or, and then our cortisol level is going to be going down because all these things, our body works really hard. That's what I tell people when you think about the what's impacting your sleep and what's going on, or why am I tired? Our body works really hard to give us messages about why or what's going on. And sometimes people's cortisol production goes down to almost flatline if you're looking through it throughout the day because they have burnt themselves out so much, burning the candle at both ends, that their body said, you know what? We're going to be done with this now. So let's
Mm.
take a rest. So there are a lot of times when your body is trying to tell you things, and if you can stop for a minute and either yourself or sit and talk with somebody, a provider, hopefully, who has the time to listen to you and say, like, here's what's going on. Can we figure out? There's a lot of information that our body shares with us.
Mm. Yeah, and we're not talking about, I mean, in the days that we're in, this does not mean the light from your phone before you go to bed
Correct.
and the
Mhm.
light from your phone when you wake up. I mean, how much is that stressing us out and really wreaking havoc on our sleep?
A lot. And that's why the sunlight, I tell people, besides kind of the dopamine, a lot of people are familiar with that. They're hearing, oh, if you're on your phone in the dopamine reward system, our lights, like our eyes, like I said, are sensitive to that light exposure. That's why even sunrise or morning light, sunset can be helpful too if you can't get that morning light, because there's different wavelengths of light that our body reacts to differently. So I tell people, if you must, now ideally nobody's on their phone for an hour before bed. It's not the first thing you get in the morning because that messes with your cortisol too. Um, I tell people, if you have to look because you don't have kids at home or you have something else going on, or your kids are away, I guess, you like know that I'm looking to quickly make sure there isn't something emergent, and I'm going to put that away afterwards and then go do the rest of your morning routine. And even just turning the lights down, it's tricky here too. Now we're good, right? Because the days are longer. But when your days are shorter, when we come home at night, 5, 6 o'clock at night, you have to have the lights on. And if you have very bright lights on, especially the LED lights that everything's going to, that is sending messages to your brain that it's not time for bed. It's not nighttime. We're going to keep going, just like your phone does. So turning the lights down when evening's coming, putting the night shift on your computer or your phone, or using amber or blue light blocking glasses, those things all count. Ideally, like I said, you'd be off your phone, but sometimes people are working, different things are happening. So there are things we can do to try to adjust. And even one day counts. I tell people, like, you can't get light exposure every day. Any day you can do that. Is there maybe that you should do a light? And especially if you're somebody who notices your sleep suffers more and your mood suffers more when the seasons change. Some people genetically
Mm.
have different impacts from their genes that can impact their ability to regulate their neurotransmitters and their hormones. And so they're more sensitive to those kinds of things. And that is one thing too, I don't know if people realize so much, that nighttime, or when we sleep, is a time when we produce most of our hormones. So even though our ovaries check out at a certain point, majority wise, when we are women and get to certain ages, we still produce some hormones, not so much progesterone, which is a very impactful hormone on our sleep. And some people do or do not recognize or realize that. And so that can make a big difference. And for a lot of women, there is not robust progesterone production, maybe even earlier in their lives, especially women who have PCOS, irregular cycles, those kinds of things, because your main place you get progesterone from is when you ovulate. So if you are not ovulating, that includes if you're taking something that's causing you not to ovulate, or your body isn't ovulating, or you ovulate, but things don't work as optimally as you'd like them to. So the egg doesn't produce that same amount of progesterone. That progesterone impacts a lot of things, including mood and sleep. And I always say, I'm never sure what started first, but I'm going to tell you how many of us don't know how different it is when you get a good night's sleep, the difference in your patience level, the difference of people getting on your nerves, and then how you feel and how we reflect in the things we tell ourselves if we snapped at someone we love, or even somebody we don't even know, if we're somebody who doesn't like to, have somebody feel poorly because of something we said or did, or not being able to provide the type of relationships with people we want to because of that. And so there's so much that can impact. Uh, so just some things to think about. And additionally, progesterone impacts um, the way that we metabolize our histamine. So allergies, I don't know if you've ever been like, oh, I started getting more allergies as I got older, because estrogen does too impact our histamine levels. And histamine plays a role in sleep and also blood sugar. So blood sugar, estrogen, and progesterone impact that too. So sometimes it makes perfect sense why some of these things start getting really like, oh my gosh, what happened to me, when things
Mhm.
start changing for us, and throw some stress and cortisol in there, because your body doesn't really care about producing hormones or neurotransmitters so much when you um, when it's just trying to survive, make it through the day. And that's one reason with sleep and sleep apnea, if you're a snorer, if you're not waking up refreshed, if you are waking up to go to the bathroom at night, that's a very common symptom of sleep apnea. So, and people don't realize it. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of different things that could be like what's going on with my sleep at night, could be what's waking you up at night. Um, so those are just some additional thoughts related to hormones and stuff too.
What are some of the top things that you see that are affecting people getting a good night's sleep?
Well, the phone, like you said,
Mhm.
is a recent study too, showing how impactful the phone is on sleep. But one big thing is, I tell people too, if you are someone who struggles with sleep at all, you need to save your bed for sleep
Mhm.
and or sex. That's it. You having things in your bed, you need your body to know, when I go to bed, it's time to go to sleep. And then sitting there and looking to see what could be disruptive. I always tell people, when it gets dark tonight, go in and look around. If you're somebody who's having trouble sleeping, any light can be bothersome. There are motion detector amber lights on Amazon. You can get amber light bulbs to put in your bedside lamps. Sometimes it's turning your clock around so that you're not seeing the light of that. Putting your phone across the room if it needs to be in your room. So when you wake up in the middle of the night, or you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, you're not tempted to look at it, because that's can be bothersome too. And here's the other thing. If you're someone who's struggling and you're taking caffeine to help with that. Most of us know some people are faster metabolizers than others of caffeine, but I have seen a lot of people who they're taking a pill or caffeine to get them through the day, and then they need a pill to help them go to sleep at night. And those things are probably impacting each other. A lot of the medications can make us sleepy in the morning too. And a lot of the medications, and I'm not saying anybody should come off anything without talking to their providers, but birth control pills, that's why you need a good hormonal balance, sleep medications, medicines for depression and anxiety, most all of them impact your sleep architecture, what your brain does in the night when you go to sleep. So just
Mhm.
like alcohol, a lot of people can go to sleep easily. They're like, oh, I can fall asleep if I have alcohol. But because of what happens, and things kind of shut down, and then all of a sudden you get a burst of those things when the alcohol wears off, that is impacting your sleep too. Also, a lot of women, when we get to, um, the perimenopause stages, or if they're the age I am, you grew up like trying to limit carbs and going to eat less calories. And so a lot of people struggle with getting through the night because their blood sugar, their body's like, oh my goodness, it either spikes up or down, and your body doesn't want you to die. So it wakes you up. A lot of times, the night sweats or hot flashes people have waking up in a panic is related to blood sugar, not just hormones. So sorting that out serves people a lot because if we can get, oh, so the hot flashes aren't so bad, but you really have an underlying blood sugar issue, um, that's really important to look at. And I'm going to be like, so I've been a nurse practitioner for 25 years, and I was through the time when we had the study that said we should stop everybody's hormones and kind of the full pendulum swings back and forth. And back in not very long ago, probably 10 years ago, I would tell my patients, if you live long enough to get on insulin with diabetes, that means we did our job to keep you alive long enough that you needed that eventually. Now, we didn't have as many things available as we do now, but also that thinking shift for me is like just same with sleeping. Do you want to take a pill? Do you want to figure out what's going on with that? Compared to there's things we can do to help with your um, blood sugar so that you don't need more and more medication for the majority of people. I also think there are some nutrient deficiencies that impact sleep, and that can come along with not eating as much as we need to, protein wise and calorie wise. And that's, I think I didn't finish that thought earlier. Like a lot of people need some complex carbs, especially women with their dinner to help their blood sugars get through the night, coupled with the other things, protein and fat and all those good things everybody talks about. But um, that kind of thinking and looking to see what else could be going on and knowing that what happens in that last hour before bed? Are you watching the news, a crime show, things that make you uh, tense, or even if it's entertaining to you, what's going on in that hour before bed? Because if you are doing things where the first time your brain gets to shut down is when your head hits the pillow, it's not that unusual to think that your mind's going to keep going. So that I think makes a huge, so what we're eating, because we might have nutrient deficiencies, and what we're intaking as far as light and what's going on around us. And then, like I said, like your day. So your morning, your caffeine. A lot of times people just need to stop it by noon if they're going to have it. I always tell people if you have caffeine because you like it, that's one thing. If you have caffeine because you need it to get through your day, you should talk to somebody about that because that is not something that should be going on. And I have a lot of women, and myself included, I was like, am I developing ADD? Like, what's going on? And I hadn't had issues before. There are people who didn't get diagnosed, but I would ask people to truly think about if this is something new for you. Changes in your loss of estrogen is one thing, but also what kind of sleep quality are you having? Because again, try to think through when you get a good night's sleep, how much better your brain. So maybe your brain still functions. Like I always felt like my brain functioned. It was just how long it took and if I needed to go back and do something and how easy it was. If you're somebody who used to be able to do a lot of multitasking, whether or not that's good or bad, you shouldn't just lose that. There's things going on, and that is a sign too. Like, how are you functioning? What kinds of things are going on? Those are things. Productivity is hugely tied to sleep. So that's another thing that kind of looking at what's going on in your day can impact too.
I am, well, the show, I just remember so many times watching shows with my husband. And if they were high thriller shows, I would tell him, like, we can't do this before bed anymore. Like, I feel the intensity of that
Mhm.
show and I cannot sleep. Like, can't turn it off. And then I'm also really bad at just working too long, too late.
Mhm.
And the older I've gotten, the more I'm just like, when morning comes, I'm like, it's so hard to get out of bed. I know that I need to do it, but it's just so hard. And I hate that feeling. Hate it. Yeah.
And that definitely can be sleep quantity, so hours, sleep quality, but also um, sometimes there's something else. We have something called the cortisol awakening response, which is how our body should respond when we get up. Within about 30 to 60 minutes of getting up, we should get a spike of cortisol, and it shouldn't be um, that we wake up very anxious. Some people have that. They wake up with really high anxiety, and figuring out what's causing that is kind of another thing. But also, if you're not having that, or if you need caffeine in order to have that cortisol awakening response, then again, what happened the night before can strongly impact that. Blood sugar can strongly impact that. Your stress and your body's ability to respond to that. So, um, when your body is using a lot of nutrients to deal with stress, and I always tell people, I was just as bad. You can, everything's good. You portray to everybody else, everything looks fine, right? But you
Mhm.
cannot trick your nervous system and your vagus nerve. It knows what's going on. And so that is something that can impact that. Um, to what's going on in the morning, and just something to think about how that can look. And there are some good ways to kind of see if that's what's going on. Because what is a bummer is that sometimes high cortisol and low cortisol, which is our stress hormone, this can look very similar. So sometimes measuring that can be helpful, but also knowing too that, like, remember, like I said earlier, so if your cortisol level is high, it's going to keep your melatonin down, so your level to sleep. If your cortisol level is low, and a lot of times people think, well, I'm stressed, why would it be low? But like I mentioned too, if you don't have the nutrients, or you've been high for so long, then your body's kind of like, not so much, and it can be lower. And then if your melatonin stays higher, so you're sleepy, that can be impactful too, as well as eating enough food. I'm sure you've talked with people about that, because that's something we're not great about. And especially a lot of people who are trying to lose weight, or maybe using medications, or even some of the things that are just supporting different things, can be impacting your ability to get enough food in your body, particularly protein, to manufacture. You need that protein to help manufacture your neurotransmitters, which again can make you sleepy if you're not making enough of those, and your hormones, which we all need some of those. So why some women um, have lower testosterone levels many times throughout their lives, because your body will use those same things to counteract the cortisol and help the cortisol then be bothered by making testosterone. Because again, reproduction is not high on your body's timetable if it's just trying to get through the day.
Mm. There's so much more I want to talk about with you, so I'm gonna have you back. But when it comes to sleep, just again, your timing was so perfect. So we were talking about sleep this week. What are some great things that people can do then to help them sleep better, whether it's a routine or maybe helping their cortisol levels, or I don't know, just what are some tips that you give your patients that are like top of mind?
Always morning light. So I tell people that's the first thing to start with. Cutting off that caffeine by noon if you can. If you're somebody who's using it till 10 o'clock at night, I say move it back a half an hour. If you're somebody who is getting by on 3, hopefully not, hours of sleep, or whatever your sleep is, if it's less than 8 hours and you are tired, I say, I don't try to go to bed. Say you're getting 5 hours of sleep. Don't try to go to bed so you're going to get 8 hours of sleep, because that's not normally going to happen. And there is a more nuance. You can work with people with more tightly than this, but even just starting out, moving your bedtime back 15 minutes. And when you have that target, then you can put it on your phone or a timer. So it's like, okay, I know an hour before bed, if I'm going to get to bed at 11, I know I better start heading there by 9:30 or 10, because I've got to finish in the kitchen or the house or whatever. If I got laundry and whatever's going on, then I should go upstairs. And I think a routine is helpful. brushing your teeth. If you're taking supplements, most people who are taking supplements or progesterone at night should be taking that for most people 30 to 60 hours or 30, 60 minutes before bed. So that kind of can get in your routine. You're brushing your teeth. A warm Epsom salt bath can be nice for people. Stretching can be nice for people, a way to bring things down. Deep breathing can be a way to bring things down. So I always tell people, I know you always want to use that time, right? Because nobody wants to give up an hour in their day usually, even if it'd be good if we were just relaxing. But what helps getting out of the bath, patting your skin dry, and putting on some nice lotion? Like those are things telling your body, like, okay, it's time for bed. I have the lights down and I'm taking care of myself for a minute. Even things you do during the day, mindfulness or deep breathing in the car, deep breathing before you sit down to eat, so your gastric juices can start turning on and helping you out. All those things that help impact your nervous system overall can help you when it's time to go to bed. And the same thing to go sit, like I said, sit in your bedroom tonight. Is there noise? Is there light? What's the temperature like? Does your pillow bother you and not supportive? On occasion, it's people's beds. So that's something to think about. Not everybody can go get a mattress right away, but that's another thing. Like I said, sometimes these kind of what we think of as basic, but seem like they shouldn't be that big a deal. They can be. If your arm's getting numb at night because you're laying on it and your mattress is bothering you, or your neck is bothering you because your pillow, like we could try a lot of things and do a lot of tests and all this other stuff. And maybe it's just like these basic things to start with. And everybody thinks it couldn't possibly be those things. But those things, improving those things are never going to hurt you. And maybe they're part of the answer or a big part of the answer. So thinking through those kinds of things, I if what's keeping you awake is your spouse or bed partner is snoring,
Mm.
there's not a whole lot of things I can do for you to help that other than getting them not to snore. And I have a lot of patients who come to me who have already had a sleep divorce. They sleep in a different bedroom. And sometimes it's a negotiation, like I got to sleep well 2 nights a week or whatever it is. And I have had a lot of bed partners who go and get evaluated and treated for sleep apnea because they would like to have their bed partners stay with them. So it kind of depends on what's going on for people. But again, should you really be doing all these things, getting all these devices, checking all these things, and taking medication just because the person is too noisy next to you? Or, and this is a hard one, this is almost harder for people sometimes than the person laying next to them. Sometimes animals can be problematic. Just like when, if they need to go up and go to the bathroom, that sometimes wakes people up, but sometimes how many are in your bed or so. Those are all negotiations and adjustments. And I tell everybody, and man, I wouldn't want to give up my pet either, or my husband. So, but fortunately, I mean, I think if you're not doing those things, if you don't have a dog or cat who sleeps in bed with you, do not start. And it's good to look at those things, because those are some big things um, when you're looking at. If you are somebody who is sleeping 7 or 8 hours a night and you are waking up not rested, that's a good sign to look and see what else is going on. And I caution this because some people get obsessive about things. And so this wouldn't be good for you. But for me, there are a lot of trackable devices, and I particularly have an Aura ring. And that told me a lot about the type of sleep I was getting. I have some patients who really struggle with deep sleep, even if they're getting enough sleep. And one of those reasons is we tend to front load our deep sleep at night. And so if we go to bed really late, even people who are sleeping longer hours, they tend to not get as much of that sleep. And we really need the different kinds of sleep. Our body does different things during those times, but also your heart rate variability. So is what's happening when you're sleeping. Those kinds of things can be a sign. Your heart rate variability is tied to your nervous system. So if you're somebody who's been having more stress, that can be part of that. But sometimes those tools can be very helpful. There's some guidance with different tools to kind of start out, because maybe if things aren't, maybe if it's more of the routine and you taking care of yourself that way, you can do those things without needing to seek care elsewhere. But If you're somebody who will be like, oh my goodness, I didn't get enough deep sleep, or I didn't do this, then it can become a problem. And I've had people who I'm like, don't look at your data for a week. Like there's not, you can't do that because it causes them anxiety. And I don't want anything to add to your sleep anxiety. Because some people really are anxious because they're laying in bed and they're like, oh, 4 hours until I have to get up, 3 hours until I have to get up, 2 hours until I have to get up. And what that does, or some people don't like to go to bed because they're so anxious about what happens when they go to bed and they know they're not going to be able to go to sleep. So they try and wait until the very last minute to get to bed because they think they're going to be so tired. But if you miss, I had a teacher who talked about this, and if you miss your sleep bus, if you're kind of getting sleepy and you don't go to bed, or you fall asleep on the sofa and you haven't gotten ready for bed when you go to bed, typically those are the people who like say, I get my second wind at, 10, 11, 12, 1 at night. That's because you're missing those evening cues that come when you're yawning or a little bit tired, or you want to do just one more thing. So really, again, listening to your body and tuning into that at least as many days as you can, because we all know it can be tricky to do it all the time. But that really can help you determine like, okay, are there's other things? And if you are somebody who is going to add hormones, obviously if it's your blood sugar, you got to do something about that in different way. Having these foundational things in place is only going to help those things, because you also want to be able to have your brain get rid of the metabolic debris, which may be hormones, hormone debris, other things that are going on. And so you want your body to be able to do all these processes before you dump hormones in for some people. So getting everything else in place is important, because otherwise, generally what happens is people feel better initially, and then they become either overwhelmed with hormones, or their receptors are too much. So there's has to be individualized, but it's something to think about. Like it always matters. These foundational things always matter, no matter what you're going to put on top of there, if you want to. Just like, so I used to see in my sleep practice heart disease and dementia after people had strokes. You would see that they would come to have their sleep apnea treated. Those things are impacted just like your blood sugar is impacted. Because if you aren't getting the oxygen you need at night, your body doesn't like that. And it doesn't let you get into deeper sleep. And it wakes you up all night long because it doesn't want you to die. And so that means your cortisol level stays up. And when we have higher cortisol levels, we hang on to weight, in particular in the areas we think of hanging on to weight that are related to hormones in menopause. So sometimes there's definitely more than one thing going on. And some people want to do hormones and some people don't want to do hormones. And there's a lot you can do if you're somebody who doesn't want to. And if you are choosing to do hormone replacement, there's a lot of things that are going to help you have that be a more optimal choice for you. If you can do these, like sleep. Sleep is like, in my opinion, very foundational for health. And it can be looked at as a badge of honor for people. Oh, I only needed 2 hours. I only needed three.
I
I
was
only needed
gonna say
four.
that. Some people, yes.
And it's not healthy. There are very few people. There are some people who genetically don't need as much sleep, but that is not common. And I would challenge people who think that is them to really have somebody look and think and either be evaluated for your reactionary time. It's shown for athletes the rate of injury. So even just when we're going, so injury for people who aren't, high level athletes, the rates of injury are higher. The rates of car accidents are higher, with um, decreasing or increasing amounts of rates of car accidents is with the decreasing numbers of sleep. Anything under 6 hours at night is pretty significant. So what has happening into your day with your productivity is huge too. So I tell some people, if you don't care about the sleep, don't you want to, like, most of the time people want to do more, 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 right? So do you want to care about that? Do you want your brain to work like it should, hopefully forever, as long as you need it? Because that is so, our ability to clear things from our brain. At night, there's something called the glymphatic system. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
No.
So it's like the lymph system in our brain, and it drains, and it mostly drains at night. And actually, when you are laying down sleeping, your brain shrinks a little bit so more can get out. And so if you're not sleeping, you are not able to have the flow of the metabolic debris and toxins, anything that's there, out of your brain the same way. So the ability for things to build up, and we're learning more and more all the time about how much these things in our environment can impact our risk for dementia. So those sometimes are ways to help people recognize the importance of sleep, or maybe something they care about. If they don't care about the fact they snore, or they don't care about who they keep up, or they don't care about those, high blood pressure is tied to not sleeping well. So there's so many things that really impact if people tie more than just, it's not that you're just sleeping, like you're doing a lot of other things at night. Your body's doing a lot of other things at night and helps consolidate your memories. I don't know if you, um, like when your kids are little, they can have a really busy day. They're talking, they're learning to crawl, those kinds of things. When kids go to bed and go to sleep, like a lot of times in the morning, they'll wake up because they are consolidating a lot of those types of memories and learning then too. We do the same thing. A lot of those things.
I was just thinking too, like the perspective shift. You know, I mean, just as of recently, by asking a lot of questions and meeting other professionals and getting experts about, these different decades of life that we go through, but how our bodies are not trying to work against us. They are just trying to keep us alive, right? And you said that again so many times today, and how our perspective in sleep being a gift to us, like our body needs this gift to reset, to flush, to detoxify, and not thinking of it as, oh, like a default thing or a side item. Like it's essential. Our body needs that so that it can do the best that it can for us.
Yeah, for sure. And the sleep deprivation is actually a form of torture. And there's a reason for that. If you've ever stayed up for 24 hours, how your body feels different if for some reason, or if you are traveling overnight or time change shifts, all those things like that makes your body feel different. It's because your body is functioning differently. What happens to you is functioning differently. And there is actually, too, some studies they've done where they give people like control for all kinds of variables, and they give people food, same calories, same exercise, all these things. And the only thing they change is how much they sleep. And by virtue of sleeping less, people gain weight with everything else being as closely controlled as they can, because your body needs to sleep in order to do its metabolic processes. So
Wow.
it's one of the things as we all um, kind of watch body changes and things that are going on. Think about when you see those shifts in your weight or weight distribution, that's what you're seeing there. And that's because things are happening inside our cells. And those kinds of things happen in our heart, in our blood vessel, in our brain. We just don't get to see it on the outside. So it's not something we focus on the same way. So sometimes really helping people like realize, like you said, a perspective shift, like, okay, I need to value this, and I need to try to know that this is the time of night I'm going to try to go to bed, and kind of build my day backwards from that. It honestly gets trickier for me when the weather is so nice, and especially when it gets hot and it's harder to do. I love to walk, and it's harder to walk earlier in the night. So really having things planned. So like, sometimes it's so hot here. It's like 9 o'clock before I'm trying to go out to walk, right? Not now. Now it's great. But so you then, I walk slower and try, because exercising late at night for the majority of people is going to impact your sleep negatively too. Movement is good, but what you're doing can be different. But just kind of like planning, right now, even it stays light so long in Boise. It's amazing. When I didn't used to live here, uh, I've lived away with the military, and I would call people and I'd see how light it was out the back window. I'd see my mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, Boise is nice here. You guys get, it's a lot, there's a lot, stays light longer, but just like how that's going to shift, because that making my routine different when I'm, and like I was talking about Like what could be impacting you? So when the temperature changes, what do you need to do to help your bedtime routine continue to be successful for you? If you have a young child, if you're going to be traveling, if you're taking care of a parent, is it, I have some patients who have, kids who don't sleep well
Mhm.
or a parent who doesn't sleep well if they're parent, helping their parents at this point. Maybe it's like 2 nights a week, I'm going to have somebody else be in charge of that. So I get 2 nights a week where at least I get this, and trying to plan things that way, because there are different stages in our lives when it's more of a challenge. And does that mean my only quiet time is this time? Can I make that be 20 minutes instead? Can I try to maybe get up earlier? Can I make sure that what I'm watching on TV or on my phone isn't stimulating my brain? Can I use my blue light blockers? Can I approach this in a manner where I know things are going to be different? And even like this isn't going to apply to a lot of people, but here's an example of how you can think about something. So in the military, when spouses would deploy, bedtime was a terrible time for me because just going up to bed. So I would avoid going to bed because I just didn't want to be that. I mean, it was gone all the time, but for some reason that was a thing for me. So I got to where the first week I knew I would just go to bed and sleep on the sofa. Wasn't as good a sleep as my bed, but I knew that, and that's where I was. And for some reason in my brain, that was okay. And then I could just transition back to bed. That helped me a lot rather than just going a week or two with not very much sleep. So if you're traveling, what kinds of things, if you're somebody who's very impacted by changes in your environment or different things going on, is there something you can take with? Is there something you can think about? Is it really, okay, I know I'm going to be changing a couple time zones. So how about if I try to change my bedtime and wake time if I can 30 minutes before I go to kind of help with that a little bit. Do I need to do like the night, oh, what are they called?
An
Not
eye
iPads.
mask?
What's that?
An eye mask?
Yes. Thank you. An eye mask, or, so, like, are those things going to be helpful for me? Cleaner or some kind of noise going. Are
There
you
you.
there?
Yep,
There.
we got you.
Okay.
We got you. We got you. This has been amazing, Renee. I can't believe like almost an hour has passed. The information has been so good and so relevant and just so important. So I thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to leave us with?
I just think I always tell people choose one or two things to do and start with those, because you can't always overhaul everything at once and continue, and it can seem overwhelming. So, and if I picked one thing, it would be, are you getting morning light exposure? And then if I could pick two things, what's happening in at least that half an hour before bed? Can you adjust that a little bit? Um, and listening to that. I do have, if anybody has interest, I have a free like jumpstart that's like a sleep jumpstart. That's a check off list. If you go to like my Instagram or even leave me a note here, I can send you the link for that. It's kind of goes over some of these main things to like, where can I get started? Because like I said, there's a huge portion of people who they just need to have a better routine. The people who struggle more than just the routine, then they should talk to somebody. But I think it's prudent and helpful to try those things first, and recognize that those things could be impacting you, rather than before you go spend a lot of time or money on things you may or may not need.
Love it. I had just am putting your just so everybody knows, I'm putting her free tool, well, not her free tool, but her Instagram into the comments for you.
And if you just DM me a 5-day jumpstart or sleep jumpstart or anything like that, I can send you the thing for that.
Perfect. Okay. I'll make sure that I get that in there. Okay. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This was so valuable, and maybe we'll have you back next time to go a little further on some other topics like cortisol and the vagus nerve. Those are
That's
big too.
great. Yes, they are. They
Yeah.
are. Just like sleep, stress. People do not realize how much stress impacts our ability to sleep and so many other things with our health. And so that oftentimes takes people a while to realize.
Mhm.
Sleep, you can feel better pretty quickly if you start doing it better. Stress takes a little bit of time because it's worn on our body for a while. So yeah, definitely good topics. I'm so glad you're doing this and sharing with everybody like how much things can change just by recognizing them and shifting your perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, I just have to always power through this. This just,
Yes.
if I just keep pushing hard enough, and if I wasn't so weak, I would be able to do this, or just accepting that this is what happens when I get older. So I love that you're sharing.
I've done that a lot in my life. If I could just power through this, but it's just gotten to the point where it's like if I continue with those habits, and I have to tell you, a lot of this whole thing for me happened because of our mind body system. Because of what I was learning about metabolic health, it opened the door to me just wanting to know more and more and more, learning about blood sugars, like what it's doing for my husband is blowing my mind, but what we're learning along the way, and I'm like, I can't wait until something bad happens. I have to
Mhm.
really be proactive and really get some knowledge here. So,
Well, and I think that fits in with your, like, when you look, think of oxidative stress when you're not sleeping and your
yes,
vagus nerve and your metabolic issues and some of the, like the protandim we've talked about and things like that too. Like all of that, you can't, you can, but I really think it's a disservice and I think you're going to get in trouble. You shouldn't just take, like, you should do these other things with things if you want the most benefit. So
yeah,
sleeping and using some of these products can be very beneficial, um, boosting everything for you that way.
yeah, yeah. We can't rely on one thing. We have to do our part too, as much as we
Yeah.
can. Yeah. Well, thank you, Renee. Have a wonderful
Thank
weekend.
you. You too.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
I'll
Bye.
get you the recording too.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.